Welcome back. This is the second day of our notes on the Reformation. So today we're going to look at some other stuff with the Protestant Reformation. We're also going to talk about how the Catholic Church responds, and that's called the Catholic Reformation. You should have this paper out and get ready to fill in the appropriate places. So you're going to see questions for what I hope you can answer after we go through this, and then you just fill in what is on your paper as we go along. So, first question is, because last time we said there were a whole bunch of issues, so we're going to look at those issues in the different places where they happen. So that's Germany, or what was then known as the Holy Roman Empire, England, and France. And then we're also going to look at what the Catholic Church does in response. So, in Germany, which is today's Germany, back then it's called the Holy Roman Empire, the princes in northern Germany are going to convert to Protestantism. So that's going to be Martin Luther's Protestantism, or Lutheran. And so, just like in England, the Pope is going to lose his authority in the northern parts of what today is Germany. So we have England breaks away, the Pope is not in charge there, and in northern Germany, the Pope is not going to be in charge there either. Now, problem is, the Habsburg family, the most powerful family in the world, they had the king of about 20 different countries at different times during this time period, specifically the Holy Roman Empire, which is mostly today's Germany, and they're going to support the Roman Catholic Church. So in the north of Germany, the princes support a Protestant church led by Martin Luther, or, well, his ideas, and in southern Holy Roman Empire, because of the ruling family, the Habsburgs, they support the Catholic Church. So in this kingdom, the Holy Roman Empire, you have a conflict over which church they should support. And that is going to lead to wars between the Protestant people and the Catholic people, mostly in continental Europe, but it spreads over to the other places around Europe as well. The most famous of these wars is called the 30 Years' War, but there's a ton of them. Basically, most of the wars for the next few hundred years are based on these religious conflicts that start during the Reformation. So, in England, and we've already seen her before, Queen Elizabeth is going to come up, and we'll learn more about her in one of our upcoming units, but she's one of Henry VIII's daughters. He starts the Protestant church in England. She's going to really make it a different church. His church was just like the Catholic Church. She's going to make what is called the Anglican Church. If something is Anglican, it means it comes from England, which we now call England. So everywhere she takes over, which is going to end up being most of the island of Britain and a lot of the island of Ireland, has to practice this form of Christianity, the Anglican Church. She's going to use that to unify everybody, and she's going to reword the Act of Supremacy. So her dad wrote one, and she's going to write one that people like the wording of better. The one her dad wrote suggested that he knew everything about religion, and she is going to soften the words so that she is just a leader. She's listed as a leader instead of somebody who knows everything. And people are going to accept that better. So it's going to work. Eventually, the Anglican Church is going to end all the arguments about Protestant versus Catholic, but not before they have wars just like they did in the German countries. But over in France, something very different happens. The king is Catholic, but because of John Calvin, there are a lot of these people that are Protestant. The word for the Protestant people in France is Huguenot. Huguenot. So the king is going to give them freedom of worship. The name of the paper or the announcement is the Edict. That means announcement of Nantes. That's the name of the city. So for the first time, we're going to have a king give permission to his subjects to practice a different religion than he does. So that's significant. Later on, about 200 years later, that's going to get taken away. But it's important. It's the first time in European history we have people are able to choose between more than one church. And later on, the French are going to be involved in that war, the 30 Years' War, that comes from the split of the two churches in Germany, or the Holy Roman Empire. And the guy running the show in France is going to realize, instead of siding with the Catholic countries, France will be better off if they side with the Protestants. So they're going to switch sides in the middle of the war because France will be better off on the winning side. So it's important historically because it's one of the first times in history and the first time in Europe that we see somebody not side with their religious group. They're going to fight against the other people who have the same religious beliefs in order to make their country more powerful. It's one of the first times we see the country being put above religion in Europe. So, all those things are going on, and the Catholic Church has to deal with them. Now, it's not the first time these ideas came up. It had been happening in sort of a cycle. Martin Luther was just the latest guy to do it. But before him, he basically copied these guys' ideas. None of his ideas were new, but these guys got in trouble for them before he could hear them. So in England, we have a guy named John Wycliffe, who is going to have very similar ideas to Martin Luther, but he also has powerful friends. He was a big shot professor at Oxford University, which was a religious school. He basically has all the ideas Martin Luther is preaching at first. Salvation by faith alone. You need to look in the Bible. You need to translate the Bible into English because nobody knows Latin. It doesn't make sense for the Bible to be in Latin. And he is going to escape being executed, and burned at the stake, because he is a really famous guy in England and he has some powerful friends. So they are going to keep telling him, stop doing these stop preaching this stuff. You're going to get yourself in trouble. You have a chance to not get in trouble. But he wouldn't do it. And eventually, he stopped traveling around and preaching. Basically, just because he got old and tired. He didn't feel like doing it anymore. And so because he quit and his friends were powerful, he escaped getting in trouble. But he got in but what the big problem was, he translated the Bible into English so everybody could read it. The next guy, who had very, very similar ideas, is going to be a Czech guy. So today that would be the Czech Republic. His name was Jan Hus. He has very similar ideas. Hus actually read Wycliffe's ideas and sort of added to them. Now his ideas are going to lead to an actual war. So this guy Jan Hus is out preaching basically the same things Martin Luther is going to preach 100 years later. But the Pope is going to send out actual troops after him to capture him because he will not take back anything he said. He had an army. So like when he would travel into town to preach, he brought army with him basically. He's eventually going to get caught and he's going to be burned at the stake because he refuses to take back all the things he's saying. So these ideas aren't new, and the Catholic Church has heard them before, but they're going to deal with them in a very different way. Those two guys are being chased around and are going to get threatened with death. But what they do this time is they realize they can't kill all these people. They want these people to come back to the Catholic Church. So they're going to come up with reforms or changes that will make it appealing for people to come back to the church. That's their goal. So they're going to reform or change the Catholic Church. So one step in this is they're going to create something called the Society of Jesus. We usually call them the Jesuits. And the idea is they're going to start schools so that everyone is taught the same thing about what the Catholic Church believes. So Jesuits are going to come up with a specific way to teach. So every Jesuit school is going to teach the same thing. It actually works well. They still today have some of the best schools in the world, including in the United States. Arguably the best school close to us is a Jesuit school, including the high schools and universities. And it's going to work. They're going to start turning out priests who all are teaching and believing the same thing. Now, something that didn't work, and we're going to look at this later in the year, is something called the Inquisition. So if you broke one of the Catholic Church's rules, they put you on trial. Unfortunately, it got out of hand, and people were getting executed for being guilty for really small crimes sometimes. Sometimes they didn't do it. Basically, the only way you were found, you were let off is if you admitted you did it, and then you got punished for doing whatever you were accused of. So it ends up driving the people who were Protestant already further away from the church instead of encouraging people to come back. They had a good idea. The idea was to kind of pull everybody in so you don't have people saying these things you don't like, but it backfired. And then the final thing is they're going to have a meeting called the Council of Trent, where all of the bishops from around Europe get together. It took about 20 years. They're going to agree, we're only going to teach these things. They come up with, this goes in the Bible. These are the things we want everybody to do, and they're listed here. I'm not going to read them. And they're going to say, this is a big one to address Martin Luther. The Bible and the traditions of the church are both important. And under certain conditions, indulgences are okay. So they are going to address all these things. Unfortunately, it's too late. The horse is out of the barn. People are already gone from the Catholic Church, and they're not going to come back. But it does help prevent more people from leaving the Catholic Church. So, some of the big cultural changes. Sort of a summary of everything we've talked about. Secularism grows because of the Renaissance. Humanism is applied to Christianity. So we have more secular ideas, which leads to more focus on the individual instead of the group. Like when France decides to do what's in France's best interest instead of the Catholic Church. And then gradually, just by being around people of different faiths, we're going to see more religious tolerance. At first, there's no religious tolerance. The groups are going to fight. Eventually, if you're Christian, they learn to get along with all the different groups, purely just based on their individual experiences with people. And then finally, and this is big, the reason Martin Luther is so successful and Wycliffe and Hus were not is because of the printing press. More people learn how to read. Because of the printing press, the Bible has now been translated into English, French, and German. And so people are reading the Bible in their own language. And they're then going to know exactly what it says, and they're not just going to follow what a priest says and trust that what he is saying is true. They're going to start looking it up. And so these new religious ideas, just like the ideas in the Renaissance, are going to spread really quickly across Europe, and it's going to change the face of Europe in ways we're going to keep studying through the semester. If you have questions about this, please get in touch with me, especially if you're watching this because you're absent. I'd love to clarify any confusion you have.